Hey, everybody. We'll go ahead and give some folks a few minutes here before we roll into it. All right, it looks like our participants numbers starting to slow up a little bit. So I'll go ahead and respect everybody's time that did make it here at the start of the hour. So we'll go ahead and roll right into it. To start things out, once again, I just want to welcome everybody to the Jira Service Management for ITSM webinar. I know it's hard to take an hour out of the day to attend something like this. So we really appreciate you guys stopping by. I really hope that you get a lot out of it. That being said, it is a jam-packed hour, so we are going to roll right into it. My name's Owen Pyatt. I'm a solution architect with Valiantys. You may see some mix of branding across some invites, emails, all that stuff. We were formerly Expium. We've since merged throughout 2023 with Valiantys. So moving forward, you probably will just see Valiantys. But if anybody has any questions around the branding, that's why. I have my partner here, Brad Wood. He's one of our ITSM consultants as well. So he'll be auditing the class and hanging out and answering questions. So we'll be moving right in. I do want to call out, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you would like to ask questions throughout, if we have time, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, have a few minutes at the end. But I'll try to answer some questions at the end of the class or into the webinar for those of you that have questions that arise throughout the hour-long webinar. All right, so Jira Service Management Fundamentals. This was a webinar that was led last week by Brad. So in that webinar, you guys covered some of the just overall foundational elements of Jira Service Management. Today's webinar, as was prefaced last week, is going to be a little bit more in depth. That being said, we are not going to cover, there's not going to be much redundancy. So we're not going to cover all the things that were covered in last week plus more advanced stuff. It's kind of going to be just the more advanced stuff. So if you haven't attended the Fundamentals webinar, if this is your first Jira Service Management webinar, I would encourage you to check us out on YouTube or attend the next Fundamentals webinar. Kylie can link a YouTube link in the chat to the Fundamentals webinar if you want to watch that following this or on your own time. So JSM for ITSM, and we're going to take a moment here to talk about the applications that are going to be needed and used throughout today's demonstration of the tool. So we'll be using Insight. For those of you that are more up to date with Jira terminology and Jira products, this is now Assets. So Insight Assets is now just rebranded as Assets, and that's going to be Atlassian's ITAM solution. So we'll be briefly going over Insight or Assets. We'll also be utilizing Opsgenie. We'll do a brief kind of call out to those two products. The reason that the call out and the overview is so brief is because neither of those products deserve a brief overview. They each have their own actual boot camp that is a 4 to 6 hour, depending on which one you're in, boot camp that does a deep dive on all of those that we offer. So if you have in-depth assets or in-depth Opsgenie questions, they probably won't get answered in this webinar today. But we do definitely have the material as well as the expertise to answer those questions. So please feel free to follow up with me after the course as well, or after the webinar. I'm so used to teaching courses. Just below that, we will be using automation for Jira. I'm sure some of you that have been in Jira for a long time are very familiar with AFJ. This is native with cloud. I will go back up to Assets and Opsgenie. These are, you do need premium or higher in order to use Assets and Opsgenie. Opsgenie can be bought on its own, but to be integrated with JSM and be out of the box available, you do have to have premium. And then just below that, we will be using Statuspage, which is a completely separate add-on through the Atlassian Marketplace. So today's demos are going to be service management. With that, we're going to be talking about how to integrate assets into your service management, your service catalog. Then we'll be talking about incident management and how to integrate Opsgenie into that process. And then we'll be talking about change management or change enablement and how to integrate your code repository as well as fully automate gated deployments of your change. All right, so we'll just take a few minutes here to kind of talk a little bit about Valiantys. Valiantys is one of only 3 global partners in the world, so one of only 3 that has a presence globally, which allows us to tap into a lot of different knowledge bases. We have a very wide team with deep understanding of the tool. We have expertise in every product under the Atlassian ecosystem, under the Atlassian suite. And we do have a great relationship with Atlassian. So we do have an Atlassian relationship team that solely is their sole purpose is to maintain a strong relationship with Atlassian. So we're often the first ones to know about upcoming releases. We're always up to date on things coming out in the ecosystem. We do have expertise across all the main practices: cloud, ITSM, Agile at Scale, as well as managed services. And we do have 360 employees worldwide with 37 nationalities, 17 offices. So like I said, just tapping back into our ability to draw from a lot of different knowledgeable people, as well as meet the needs of any company around the world. All right. So I know today's just an hour long. We do have a full 2-day Jira Service Management Bootcamp, where the goal of that class is to get everyone that attends to the point where they could build a service desk from scratch. So it's an action-packed 2 days. It's a full 2 days, so it's about 16 and a half hour course where we do a deep dive on all things JSM. What's really cool about Valiantys is all of our instructors are not just instructors. We're also consultants and solution architects and people that are in the tool every single day, creating solutions, as well as migrating from other platforms. So we have a deep knowledge of the tool. We don't just have a curriculum memorized and we're teaching a course. So that's always something that is a little bit unique about Valiantys. All right, so starting out, our first demo today is going to be asset and service management. So who is this for? This is going to be for service teams as well as IT teams. Now, a common challenge is the need to easily track and manage assets as well as services relating to those assets. So a solution to that, an easy to maintain asset database that seamlessly integrates with our ticketing system, in this case, JSM. So the tools used for this demo are going to be JSM, assets, as well as automation for Jira. That being said, we'll go ahead and jump over to the Help Center. And like I said earlier, we're not going to be doing a deep dive on the Help Center today. We approach this this webinar with the expectation that some of you have attended the Fundamentals webinar or don't need the Fundamentals webinar and you're ready to hear about the advanced features of JSM. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our featured portal of IT Service Desk. And we see here that we're then prompted with our individual portal groups. And I'm going to go ahead and select computers here. Zoom in a little. So then we're presented with our request types, and I'm going to select request a new laptop. So we have our system fields that are going to appear no matter what, our ability to jump to a different portal group, our ability to jump to a different request type within our selected portal group, our ability to change the reporter or to set who is raising this request. And then just below that is where our request form or our dynamic form is starting. So we have our reason for requesting a new laptop. So I'm going to go ahead and say current equipment is damaged. Now, this is actually going to affect our asset on the back end, and we'll talk about that after I submit our request here. So I'm going to go ahead and select current equipment is damaged. And then below that, we just have any specific details. So I'll say, spilled some coffee on my laptop. And then just below that is where things get a little bit cooler than a regular service request demo. We have our asset object fields. Now, these fields look very similar to other drop-down fields from a face value, but the second I click into one, you're going to notice that they present themselves a little bit differently. We have this nice icon. That's really it. But they are much different on the back end. So this asset object field is actually tied directly into assets. Now, for those of you that are administrating Jira and you're creating custom fields, there is a custom field type called asset object field. It's under the all or the advanced filter or sorting of custom fields. And then that's where you actually configure the custom field and scope it to certain object types to present. So this is actually tied to our laptop object type in the back end. So I am selecting an actual object type of MacBook Pro 16-inch. Obviously, your customer or requester is not going to know all that, but that's good. To them, they get a seamless approach of, oh yeah, I'd like the new 16-inch laptop. And then just below that, we have another asset object field, and that's going to be the assignment group. Now, for those of you that have a lot of experience in Jira and specifically JSM, you may be thinking assignment groups don't exist. Well, with assets, they can. So if I click assignment group, I can then be prompted with a list of assignment groups that are built out as objects in assets with specific users tied to those groups as an attribute. So I'm going to go ahead and select laptop maintenance. Now, I understand that this may not be, your customer requester may not be the one actually selecting the assignment group, but we're just kind of here to show some of the capabilities of linking assets with your service catalog. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this request. Now we're all rather familiar with the form submission screen. Here's all of our information that was on the form, our ability to comment back to the agent, the status, whether or not to control the notifications, cancel the requests, our request type, and then we could add request participants here as well. I know that was really fast, but that was a fundamentals piece. So we are going to move directly into the back end and kind of talk about what these asset integrations look like from the agent perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and click my issue key there. And we'll see our asset object fields pulled in two objects. So like I'd said on the portal view, the interface is relatively similar. You get a nice icon, but that's really the only difference. On the back end, you actually get a lot more UI differences when you actually create this asset object field. Now, when you actually do build out and configure an asset object field, you can control which attributes are actually portrayed out on the issue view. So there may be 5 or 10 more attributes associated to this laptop, but we know that our agents are only going to need to know these things: the name, vendor, screen size, CPU, RAM, storage, and status. Now you see here the status, and like I'd said, that first drop-down field is actually going to affect one of our asset fields on the back end. So we see this status. We have a status attribute type on this asset or on this object. But now if I scroll down here and I see so sorry, I'm not seeing my affected hardware here. Well, live demos are great. You can link your affected hardware out on the issue view so that when the actual, when I selected damage, and if I was to look at that old, that old hardware that was attached to my user, when I selected that hardware was damaged, automation for Jira can come in and can actually change that status from offered to damaged. And we'll see that when we move into assets, into the actual object schema, but you can present that out on the ticket as well. And then just below that, we see our Group A laptop maintenance. This is another, like I said, another asset object field where we selected the group. So here's some information. Right now, we're only showing the name. We're only pulling that in. But what can be really cool about utilizing this feature is we can have this variable assignment group queue. So instead of having, possibly 100, I've seen teams with 1,000 assignment groups or groups. You can now just have one, since it's based on a variable AQL, asset query. So now every ticket that is in the system that is assigned to the group that I am a part of is going to show up in this queue. So it's acting kind of similarly to how our assigned to me queue is working. It's just based on whoever's logged in. So a lot of great functionality, a lot of efficiency gains there. Now you can just import all of your groups into assets, and you can link all those users to those groups, and then you can have this variable queue. Now, it is a little bit of a cumbersome process, but still less time than building out 20 queues or 100 queues and doing it that way, and just great for governance with your queues as well. All right, so we will head back into assets now, and I'll just kind of talk through some of the structure. So I'm going to go ahead and select employees. And before I do that, assets is a very versatile tool. You can store your CMDB in here. You can store your CRM. You can store your org chart and assign laptops and assign assets to your users. So a lot of different capabilities here. It really is an object database where you can build out references. It's not a prototypical CMDB that can only house CIs. It's a really versatile tool. And once you get comfortable with it, it's really easy to get creative and how to use it and to how to create those efficiencies across your company. So here I am in my employees object schema. So the hierarchy for assets is going to be object schema, object type, and then object. And then within each object, we have those list of attributes here. So I'll go ahead and select on Owen. We see my list of attributes here. If I was to go back to the ticket, I'd see that Brian Dar was automatically placed as the approver on the ticket because he's stored as my manager. As we see here, I am a part of the laptop maintenance crew, so that's why all those tickets were appearing in my queue. I work in the St. Louis department, or I'm sorry, the St. Louis location in the IT department, and here is my laptop. And as we see here, that status has changed to damaged. So this is the laptop that I spilled coffee on because I selected laptop was damaged, and the tool knows that this is my laptop. It automatically changed the status to damaged. So not only are we integrated into our service request management or our service catalog, but we're actually maintaining our asset management database by having them integrated. So once again, a lot of efficiency gains made when you create a healthy connection between assets and JSM. A few more things to call out. Over here, we have all of my references. So in order to actually reference to another object, I'd have to go into my attributes, and I see that these references are objects. So all of these other, department is an object with objects to be selected here. All the locations, that's an object. So our attribute type is an object. So you can reference objects to other objects. And then really quickly, because it's a common question, how do we get data into assets? There's a few different ways. You can either run a discovery scan. with Atlassian's discovery tool. You can import a JSON file, you can import a CSV file, or you can utilize an external import based on an external app, like something from the marketplace or something that connects directly to Jira's asset database. And you can also just manually create new objects and object types with our create object here. And then we always like to show the object graph, just kind of a cool way to visualize how everything is connected. All right, so that is going to be it with assets. I'm going to move back to our slides here. Don't forget to populate the Q&A as we move through things. All right, so incident management. Who is incident management for? It's going to be for IT operations teams. Now, what is the common challenge here? It's going to be to respond quickly to get things back on track and ensure a proper follow-up. Now, what's the solution to that challenge? That's going to be a centrally managed alerting and tracking of deployments, as well as service relationships, an incident command center, as well as integrated communications between teams. The tools used for this demonstration are going to be Jira Service Management, Opsgenie, Statuspage, as well as Confluence. So we'll head back out to our Help Center. Once again, we're going to maneuver through our portal. The portal channel takes you directly to whichever individual portal offering was selected internally. For those of you that don't know, every portal down here is just a service project. This is just how service projects display themselves on the portal. So whenever I click into IT Service Desk, I'm actually automatically connected to the IT Service Desk project. It makes sense, but sometimes it's just nice to actually hear what that portal is even coming from. So I'm going to select servers and infrastructure, and I'm going to raise an incident. Now, what's great about the portal is request types are linked to issue types. So although my customer or requester, they may or may not know what an incident actually is. So it's nice to be able to, to them, they're just reporting a system problem. But on the back end, they're actually raising an incident. So that's kind of how you can have your customers or requesters raise their own incidents by not maybe having your request type say raise an incident. It could say report a system problem or report broken hardware or report an access problem. It's a lot easier to communicate those things to people without an ITSM understanding of what an incident is. So once again, our same form-based experience. We're going to go ahead and summarize the problem. We're going to say we can't access the website. When I do that, I'm going to see a few suggested articles, add gift cards to the website, as well as website is down. But neither of those are really going to help us here. So I'm going to move on to our description field. So describe what happened. And I'm just going to say getting an error. And then just below that, you may or may not have your affected services field directly just present on the form. You may name it something else or, present it dynamically in some way to kind of, or fill it automatically based on, some matrix or something. But for demo's sake, we are just going to present our affected services directly to the form. Now, affected services, although it is tied to assets, you do not need premium to utilize the feature. So affected services are technically housed and stored in assets, but you build them out in JSM, and you also don't need premium. But they're stored, and the functionality is the same of an asset object field, which is really nice. So just below there, we could probably attach a screenshot of the error message, but I'm not going to do that. And then just below that, how urgently does this need to be fixed? medium, and moderate. And then this is where generally, we'll have some sort of automation on the back end that's actually looking at our impact and our urgency and setting a value for the priority based on those two things, which we can then route into Opsgenie to get everybody in the loop. Because if this is a P1 or a P2, we know that needs to be an alert. We need to alert everybody whenever those tickets arise, but we don't necessarily want to alert everyone anytime an incident comes in. So build out your priority matrix and then set that priority matrix as a condition in Opsgenie to alert individuals when something arises. So we'll go ahead and send. And then once again, we have our form submission screen. We're all experts on that now, so I am going to dive right in. And as we see here, before I move on, our status page is working wonderfully, and we do know that the website is down. So this would probably be a time where you'd reach back out to the customer or requester and say, we know the website's down. Status page's main goal is to help alleviate the raising of the ticket itself. But I'm going against that, and I'm raising the request. I'm saying I can't access the website. I'm going to disregard the status page notification. So once I submit the request, tying back to our PowerPoint slide, our main goal here is to communicate and notify and get to the bottom of. So all of the features that come out of the box once we turn on the incident management feature is to do those three things. So we're going to start right here at the top with the investigate button. So the investigate button is going to be tied into Bitbucket, and we're going to be able to see recent deployments that could have caused this outage. If I think it's deployment 170, I can select that and I can add a potential cause here. And then now that's going to be logged. Other people will be able to see that and get notified. Just below that, we see our affected services. Now, once again, I said that this was stored in assets, and I didn't just make that up. It really is stored in assets. And as we see here, we can see every other issue, every other open incident that is attached to that same service. So once again, just kind of creating that cross, company communication, visibility across the company, across the industry, to see, hey, we're experiencing this as well, or hey, this seems to be a reoccurring issue, or a bulk issue where 20 incidents just came in. Maybe we have a major problem here, so major incident. But and then just below that, we have our urgency and impact. And then we see here that our priority is set to low, so we're not necessarily going to be raising any alerts because of that. And then just below that, we get a lot of functionality from our affected service field here. So just below that, we have changes on affected service. So now this is going to be every change request that was completed. So kind of the same as the investigate button, but not every change is going to be a deployment. So we see here that every change that was on that same affected service is going to be pulled in here. So if we see, this change might have been an issue or something like that. So it just allows us to further investigate and understand what could have caused this incident. Just below that, we have our internal note, which is obviously always there. We have our ability to reply to the customer. But now we have this new button, which is going to be inform the stakeholders. So we can inform stakeholders that are specifically added to this service. And that's going to be built out when we actually configure the services. We're not going to be doing that on this webinar. But when you build out, you can attach certain people as stakeholders to each service. So moving over to the right-hand side of the screen, we're not all the way done with all of the features that you get from incident management. It's probably the most feature-rich feature out of the ITSM features in JSM. So a lot of clicky buttons that you get when you turn on incident management. So the first one on this on the details fields here is going to be our major incident toggle. Now, this is not necessarily the most powerful toggle in the world. It is something we can report on, we can run automations on, but it's really only going to flag it and give us this nice label here out of the box. It will also add it to the major incident queue that comes out of the box as well once we turn on our incident work category. So moving on down, we see that we have the ability to start a conference call. Now that is a little bit different than some of the other features in JSM. So if I was to start this conference call, it would pull us into Opsgenie. Opsgenie gives you the conference call capabilities out of the box. You definitely can sync Teams or Zoom to JSM if you'd like to use that as your chat channel or conference call service. But out of the box, you do get the ability to start a conference call through Opsgenie, and then that call will be active for the lifespan of the ticket. So if it's 2 a.m. on a Friday and we get a P1 come into the server and we need to all jump on the call, you'll have the ability to do that right here from the ticket. And then just below that, you do have the ability to connect a chat channel to JSM and to begin chatting about the incident. Just below that, we see some other fields that are coming over from Opsgenie. So we see our responder that's been mapped over from Opsgenie. We also see the support team and then other linked alerts. At this time, we don't have any linked alerts. So we are going to move over to Opsgenie and kind of talk a little bit about Opsgenie, kind of how to build some of this stuff out. Like I said, it's not going to be a deep dive on Opsgenie just because it is a full-on webinar. So we'll head back to project. Actually accessing Opsgenie is a little bit weird. So once you turn on incident management in your feature set, and just before I do that, let me show you guys how to do that. So if I go to project settings, then features, that's where you'll see all of the features that we're talking about in this webinar. So we see SR management, incident management, problem management, change management, PIRs, customer service management, which is still slightly in beta. And we see our services, alerts, and on-call. So that's where you would come to actually turn these on. If you want to toggle on or expand and see what features you actually get with each feature, you totally can. But that's where you actually go to actually turn them on. Those are not available in data center or server. The ITSM feature set is only available on cloud. Sorry if I haven't made that clear before right now. So once you have Opsgenie connected, you can select alerts, and that will take you over to Opsgenie. So here in Opsgenie, we see all of our alerts that have come into the system. Not, like I said, not every incident is going to raise an alert if you don't want it to. You do have the ability to manage and set conditions when you want incidents to trigger alerts. Now, if you've connected your tool to a monitoring system, then obviously those will be created as alerts, and then vice versa. You can create rules that create incidents in JSM based on certain conditions as well. So it works both ways. Today, we're going to be focusing on how to actually build out teams. So right here, we have our list of teams in the system. We'll go ahead and select IT Ops team. Within IT Ops, you'll be able to set routing rules. You'll be able to set escalation policies, so what happens after so long, and then also be able to build out custom on-call schedules based on each team's team members' availabilities, who's going to be monitoring or being assigned alerts and incidents during that time. Then we'll go ahead and talk through integrations. So the integrations tab, this is going to be where we actually integrate with a monitoring tool. So all the big players here, Datadog, SolarWinds, AWS services. So all of the big time monitoring tools are in here. If your tool or your solution is not, you also have the ability to connect via API. So a lot of possibility to connect your monitoring tool into Opsgenie to make sure that you're monitoring all of your alerts. All right, and then the last feature we're going to be talking about is going to be heartbeats. Heartbeats are kind of a cool feature set within Opsgenie. You can create connections into specific systems or services. You can set the ping interval for when you want that service or system to get pinged, and then based on what happens if you don't hear something, you can create those rules to create alerts based on that. That is all we're going to talk about with Opsgenie. Like I said, I know that it's not super in-depth, but the main reason for this webinar is just to kind of talk through how to actually integrate it into the tool, what it can look like, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The main goal for today's webinar is what JSM can look like with an experienced integration with Opsgenie assets and possibly a data repository tool like Bitbucket, which we'll look at right now. All right, so we'll head back to our slides. And we'll talk about change enablement or change management. So who is change management for? Change management is going to be for change managers as well as developers. Now, what is the challenge? It's going to be to manage risk and to coordinate changes, as well as ease the bureaucratic effort of cross-team solutioning. Now, the solution for that is going to be automated risk assessment, ticket creation, as well as solution. Now, as well as resolution. Now, automated is before all those things. So it's automated risk assessment, automated ticket creation, as well as automated resolution. Now, the tools needed for this are going to be Jira Service Management, Bitbucket, as well as automation for Jira. Now, before we go back to the tool, I do like to preface, I know I just kind of talked to it a little bit just a few minutes ago, but I do like to preface before the change management demo is that this is not the first step of change management in JSM. This is the final step. So this is Jira flexing its muscles, saying this is what I can do. Like I said, that's the main purpose of this webinar, is to show what JSM and Jira can do when it's integrated and built on a solid foundation of sturdy, robust automations, as well as robust integrations with sound tools. So change management can totally be a workflow with a CAB approval at some point, and that's it. That's great. And it's also good to know that you don't have to try to make your service fit this ever. But if you do, and if your site and your process is mature and ready to be handled in this way, then it's good to know that Jira can fulfill these requirements. So we're actually going to head over to a different project. We're actually going to start in Jira software for this demonstration, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new ticket. And I'm going to go ahead and say update to payroll. And I'm going to go ahead and create that ticket. I'm going to go ahead and view the issue. And then before I do anything else, I'm going to head right over to Bitbucket. So here I am in my repositories. I'm going to select our payroll repo, and I'm going to make an edit to that source code because it's fun to pretend that I'm a programmer, which I am certainly not. So we're going to go into our code here. We're going to go ahead and select edit. If it wants to load, there we go. And I'm just going to go ahead and add my name here. Once I click commit, I'm going to have to add a commit message. Now this part is rather important for the demo. I'm going to say commit code for SSP 89. Now what that's actually going to do is, if you look up here, that's the issue key for the story that I just created in my sample Scrum project. So now when I select commit, we're going to see a few things happen. Go over to my pipeline. Now, unfortunately, there is just a little bit of waiting, sitting and waiting for this part of the demo. But once this actually deploys, we're going to see a few cool automations running in the background and a lot of efficiency gains that are made with this process. This is usually when, if I was on a client call, I'd start talking about the weather, but I can't hear you guys. So the weather here, me and Brad are in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm not sure if any of you guys are near us right now, but it is pouring down rain. All right. Okay, awesome. So tickets, the code's been deployed. We'll head back out to our story task here. We're going to see a few things. So firstly, we're going to see a linked issue here. Now, I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. We'll also see that there's been one commit here that's been logged under our development tab. And then moving back to the linked issue, you may be like, what actually even is that? If I was to go through our linked issue wormhole and travel into the ITSD. So ITSD is our service project. And so what that actually did is, because there's a few things going on. So we see our affected service as payroll. Now, when I drop that down, we see that it's a tier 3 service. So this is going to be a standard change for us. That means it's pre-approved, routine maintenance. You know, we have a sound process for this, and we don't need to approve this ticket, this change request. So when I made that change, that standard change, the tool automatically created a change request in JSM, linked the two together, as well as auto completed it once the code deployed. So all of that happened in the background. It also pulled in some information for our summary, as well as, like I said, linked the two tickets together. So a lot of functionality gained there, a lot of efficiency gained there. But now we're actually going to show a gated deployment. So I'm going to go ahead and create another story in my sample Scrum project. And I'm going to go ahead and say change to the website. And I'm going to go ahead and create. I'm going to view this issue. And then very similar process. I'm going to go back to Bitbucket, go back to our repos, and I'm going to select payroll. I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to edit. Give it 1 second. All right. And then I'm just going to take out my last name here, and I'm going to commit. I'm going to put my commit message, and I'm going to log that as change to SSP 90. Well, I could say change for SSP 90, which is once again how that automation knows where which story ticket actually linked or triggered this change. So I'm going to go ahead and commit. Now this one does take a little bit longer, but there's a little bit more going on. And this one is pretty cool. So now I'll head back to my ticket. Before I do that, let me. Oh, I'm sorry. Man, things are moving slow. Head to our pipeline here. We see that it's in progress. All right, so once again, we see that something is, I apologize, something is going on with some of our automation here. So I apologize. I selected the I selected the wrong repo. I was going to say something's not working right. Give me 1 sec as I recreate that. All right, we have our change to website. Go back to our repo. Go to our mobile app. I am so sorry. Change to our website. I really apologize here. Sorry, something's been a little bit moved around. So I'll go ahead and commit here. And then that was SSP 91, I believe. Go to our pipeline. Sorry, I know this part of the demo just requires some waiting. Guys, I really apologize. Something's been changed around. What is supposed to be happening is our website is listed as a tier 1 service. Once that code is deployed, it automatically creates a change request, links the 2 tickets. Once that change request gets approved by CAB, then the code will actually deploy to production. Once again, I really apologize for the miscue there, but you guys got to see how the overall practice kind of happens with the actual efficiency gains there of auto linking those services or those tickets together when they get auto created with the appropriate automations running in the background. Looks like we have a few questions here. So I'll kind of move into that. So the first question, how do you discover assets? That's a great question. So Atlassian does provide a discovery tool, Atlassian Assets Discovery, which will allow you to discover onto your networks. Now, that tool only does do discovery network scans. So if you have things behind certain firewalls or on certain networks that can't be discovered via discovery scan, you may have to look at some other discovery tools. There's a few apps on the marketplace that can look into specific networks like Azure and soon to be AWS. But right now, it is a cumbersome process and requires some due diligence from your networks team. So it's a great time to look at the documentation that's provided with Assets Discovery. Kylie, could you link that in the chat? The Assets Discovery tool. I have access to the chat here, so I'll put this in the chat. We see a lot of people. It works for some companies. Other companies do need a more in-depth and capable tool. But there's the link to the Assets Discovery tool. Does the urgency and impact field tie into the built-in priority scheme in a Jira instance? I don't know if I exactly understand your question. So out of the box, no. Urgency and impact do not automatically set the priority. That has to be built in automation. By commonly, the common approach would be to just build out a long if-else block chain to manage, if priority equals this and urgency equals this, or I'm sorry, if impact equals this and urgency equals this, then set the priority as such. So that does not happen out of the box. Please confirm if ITSM/Opsgenie is not available with Data Center. ITSM is not available with Data Center version. I believe Opsgenie is. I don't believe it's available out of the box connected to JSM on DC. But I know that the ITSM feature set is not available on Data Center. I apologize if you weren't aware of that before today. Alerts from monitoring systems to Opsgenie. Is there any intelligence built in to create fewer incidents and avoid false positives? So fewer incidents or fewer alerts, I'm not quite sure. To create fewer incidents, yes, you can create routing rules into JSM that only create incidents based off of certain criteria or certain conditions that are met. So that can be done. Typically, we would aggregate development-led changes into a singular versioned release. Hey Brian, why don't you go ahead and email me, and we can talk about that maybe off the call. It's a little bit more in depth. Try to move through some more of these questions. Oh wow, thanks, Michael. That was or Mikkel. Thanks for that. Hopefully the the interface changes didn't affect your guys' experience too much. I really apologize about that. But I'll go ahead and throw my email in the chat here. Please feel free to follow up with me if you guys have more in-depth questions. I'm happy to hop on a call and talk about something a little bit more in depth. I really appreciate everybody coming. Got about 5 minutes back for your day. Like I said, thank you guys for coming, and hope to hear from some of you soon.